everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Michael here with another episode of our Street Smart Ventures podcast. We have had so many great things in store for you all today, and I'm super pumped to be joined by my super special guest, Hunter Steinitz. Hunter, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, for those of you, you're going to learn a lot more about Hunter today, but I had the extreme pleasure of getting to know Hunter through the years through national youth engagement work, Yeti, and we'll talk a little, we'll plug all of our cool things we're doing later on. But you are just in for a treat because Hunter is an amazing advocate, faith leader. Hunter, you just embody everything a strong advocate should be and hope to be. So I know our conversation is going to be super thought provoking because for our listeners, Hunter and I have been kind of going back and forth about podcast ideas, and we've done other recordings for other ventures we've been a part of. But for our Street Smart Ventures podcast, again, SSV for short, we are all about life design, helping people move forward, helping agencies move forward, and really being change makers, consultants, finding the needs, filling in the gaps of what's going to make your life better. And so part of what Hunter and I were talking about is, okay, what is truly a pattern we've been seeing out there in our own personal lives and our professional lives? And that is, drum roll, difficult conversations. And I cannot think of a better person to have an in-depth conversation with because you and I have had many private chats about difficult conversations and what gets in the way of having them and what's at stake when we don't have them. So I'm just super happy to dive in on this with you, Hunter.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to talk about that and a whole lot more. A little bit of background on me. I was born with an extremely rare genetic skin condition called Harlequin ichthyosis. I have bright pink skin that often peels, and I take baths and use lotions and all kinds of stuff. But so when I'm coming at the lens of interacting with people, I am interacting with people through the lens of having ichthyosis. So all of my interactions kind of circle around this, I like to call it the red elephant in the room, the thing that no one wants to talk about, but everyone is thinking about. And so, that kind of can be a difficult conversation to navigate because it's uncomfortable to a certain extent. There are people who want to know all sorts of things that are in the nicest way possible, none of their business. Um, and so finding the ways to answer their questions without violating my own privacy and, desire to just live my life. But I think tough conversations are a whole lot more than just letting someone into your personal life. It's also sometimes you have someone who's really going through it and you want to make sure that they're okay. Or maybe you are coming across tension in a workplace environment and you're trying to navigate weird conversations and dynamics. All of that kind of stuff are tough conversations too. And the thing I try to ground myself in whenever I'm going into a conversation like that is, what are my values? So not just what do I value in other people, but what do I value in myself? And how do I want to bring those parts to this conversation? And sometimes that means prep work. Sometimes that means coming in with a list of points that we're going to talk about and maybe a list of points we're going to avoid. Things I'm not going to say. Because sometimes you just need to get them out of your system so that they don't come out at the time you don't want them to. Because sometimes having a filter is so much work. I would love to turn the filter off and say things that, in the moment would feel really great. But maybe are not the most helpful or productive. I try to, and this is where the faith aspect comes in. I am an elder in the Presbyterian Church USA. I am in the process to be ordained a pastor in that tradition. And I do a lot of work in that intersection between faith communities and the disability community. Um, and what's really interesting is that your mindset and how you choose to go into a situation will kind of dictate, even before you open your mouth, the tone of the
Mhm.
conversation. Um, and I think that's true whether you are a person of faith or not. Um, this is not me trying to proselytize to anybody. This is just the principles with which I
Mhm.
use that have helped me. Um, and honestly, I try to that filter process, I try to send my thoughts through a couple different gates. Um, First of all, is it helpful? Is the thing that I have to say helpful to the conversation? Or would it bring us closer to a solution? Or would it create more animosity and maybe distraction from the solution? That's the first one. Second one, is it kind? Is the thing that I want to say something that will help that person? Is it kind to them, or is it something that would tear them down? And last but not least, is it necessary? Because sometimes there's a lot I have to say that is not necessary to the wider conversation, is not helpful to the wider conversation, and maybe isn't kind to some of the other participants in the conversation. Um, and so, for me at least, when I go into those conversations, I try to keep those: is it necessary? Is it helpful? And is it kind?
Mhm.
Um, and if the answer to all of those is yes, then I will say it. Um, Sometimes that means I might hold off on conversation if I'm too heated.
Mhm.
Um, I might decide, you know what, I don't trust myself to be able to respond to this calmly, so I am going to separate myself until I can, and then we will return. Because sometimes some conversations are too important to have heated.
Mm. And
Um,
there's no like redo but like a video game or like a refresh on a page. Sometimes do you, or is it accurate if I say okay, like it's so important to maybe have the initial conversation quotes correctly that it's worth doing all of this prep work.
Absolutely, yes. Because words can be very sharp things. Um, to paraphrase, right, the pen is mightier than the sword for a reason. Um, I can't tell you the number of times I have been in a meeting with my therapist trying to undo the work of a few words said in anger by somebody I cared about. And from having been on the recovery end of that, I don't wanna inflict that on someone else. I don't wanna say something in the moment that I genuinely meant in the moment,
Mm.
um, and then look back on that and go, maybe that wasn't the best version of myself that I wanted to
Mm.
put forward."
Mm.
Um, and sometimes there are some conversations that there just are not going to have nice, clean, up in a bow resolutions to. And that is really frustrating and really hard to sit with, and it's true. Um, I don't know about your audience, but I am a huge nerd. And so if you are at all familiar with Star Trek: The Next Generation, you are probably familiar with Captain Jean-Luc Picard, who at one point says, "You can do everything right and still lose." Um, you can do all the prep work. You can have your list of points. You can go into the conversation. You know, I'm going to uphold, what I want to stick to, and I'm going to use my three gates and all that stuff. And you get in there, and it just doesn't work. The person you're talking to isn't hearing you, or what they say hits your buttons, and your list goes out the window. Whatever it is, there are lots of different ways that those conversations can change once you actually start having them.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and that's okay. Um, just kind of remembering that You want to, as best you can, ground yourself in where you are. And if you get too heated, there is nothing wrong with saying, let me take a pause. This is not a me agreeing. This is not me disagreeing. This is me pausing.
Mhm,
There's a difference.
mhm,
Um, and I find that generally speaking, that is helpful. I also find that being fast to apologize also is helpful. Now, granted, I am the kind of person who maybe is a little too quick to apologize for things that are probably not things I need to
mhm.
apologize for.
Same.
um, but I have just generally found that being quick to accept humility does a lot to diffuse situations that would
Mhm,
otherwise
mhm,
be tense.
mhm,
So, okay, fine. I'll own that little bit of egg on my face if it means that we can move this conversation forward. Um, Sometimes that is more important than this one little sticking point on this one argument.
mhm,
Um, and being able to recognize that, being able to put the pride aside when it's possible. Um, does it always work? No. But I find that that's what I have leaned on, and I find it helpful.
mm. Way too many gems. I'm thinking for a quick second because I want to follow up on a few things, of course.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Also, I just want to say, maybe this is immature of me to say, but also, can I just tell you, Hunter, and our audience, I find there's often not much more that can be annoying to me personally than someone who always has to be right and is never wrong. Like, oh, okay, so let me just get that out of the way before I can be professional again. So I want to go back to really earlier in your response. I think you brought up you're having conversations from the lens of someone with a visible disability, and you brought up a great point that there are going to be distinctions and conversations that are worth having and not worth having. So you made a great point of like helping us understand just not every conversation has to happen. You can absolutely have that mindset of, you can mentally kind of understand, oh, these topics are XYZ. I'm not even going to go. They're not even worth addressing. So that's actually a really great point. But also, I do want to address. You made this job very easy for me with everything you said, Hunter. Is values, and I think that's not often talked about. I think as a society, we often are very interest based or like popularity based. So could you talk more about values and really how that has helped you as a person, your sense of self, and how you are navigating these conversations?
Absolutely. So I serve on my church's governing council, and one of the things that I hold in high regard is knowing that we all come to this table with different perspectives, but the same values. We have decided collectively that these are the things we as a group care about, and these are the things we as a group are going to make decisions in effort to create, right? And so I take that same mindset to other conversations that I have. I know that when I walk into a space, I want to uplift the voices of people who are not there. So I am constantly looking in all of the conversations I'm having for who isn't here and who do we need to make room for. That is a value that I bring to the conversation. And something important about these are not values that I am trying to force on the other person in the conversation. These are values that I am using to decide how I will navigate the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Those are different things.
Mm-hmm.
um, and, you know, to that end, right, I want to listen for perspectives that are different from my own. Um, I recognize that I don't know everything. I can't possibly know everything. I know what I know, and I'm also pretty upfront, or at least I try to be, when I don't know something. And I want someone, I'm not familiar with that. Can you tell me more? Because if you're curious, that's one of my values, curiosity. I am curious about the things around me, not necessarily critical, but curious.
Mm-hmm.
I want to understand the thing that you're saying. I want to, for lack of a better phrase, pick it apart. um, to understand, is there something here I can agree with you on? Even if I disagree with your premise, is there something in here that we can find unity on? And especially in today's very polarized world, we can get very stuck in our camps of the people who agree with us and the people who disagree with us, and how we talk about those groups. As a value, I steer clear of, as best I can, dehumanizing language. Um, I can disagree with someone about everything they have to say about anything important. And I believe in their right to say it. um, that whole First Amendment thing, right? Um, I may disagree with what you have to say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it, right?
Mhm.
Um, but, when saying whatever the thing is becomes harmful to other people,
Mhm.
that's when it stops being you're free to say what you want.
Mhm.
The second what you have to say hurts another person, it's like, oh, what's the metaphor? When I didn't punch you, your face got in the way of my fist, right? Like,
Mhm.
totally. That is definitely not what happened. Those kinds of conversations, and that's what we mean by conversations that are worth having and conversations that
Mhm.
are not worth having. If you are in a conversation where another person's human dignity is on the table for debate, that is not a conversation that is worth having.
Mhm.
Full stop. Um, I don't entertain that, and I don't allow the people around me to entertain that. That is one area where I will push that value, because I
Mhm.
don't think that that is an appropriate way for people to behave, and I will not tolerate it in my presence.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and understanding those kinds of ground rules for yourself
Mhm.
sets you up to be able to be flexible for whatever conversation comes your way, whether
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
someone you know or someone you don't know. Because difficult conversations come in a bunch of different forms. Um,
Mhm.
they can come from a well-meaning stranger who says some really, the amount of times I've been in public and people have been like, "Have you tried keto? Or have you tried yoga? Or have you tried going gluten free?" And I'm like, "No, and I'm not going to." Um, Thanks, but no thanks. Um, yeah, I think the important thing with regard to values is, again, it's not about forcing a value of yours onto someone else or
Mhm.
forcing them to conform to a value of yours. It is about creating and making space for your own values and being as consistent as possible with them, um, and owning when you're not consistent.
Mm. It's what you brought up reminds me of something I heard years ago in love. It's in a way, people treat you how you treat yourself. Like I'm sure people now know and expect that of you, Hunter, is like you are rock solid in knowing who you are and your values. So I'm totally hearing that it is absolutely worth, our listeners here, it is absolutely worth taking time to maybe spend as much time or as little time as you want and or need in figuring out what are my values, what am I flexible on, and what will I not be flexible on and cannot negotiate. So I'm really appreciating. I think you have brought in a lot of personal lived expertise from your life, but also are giving us a lot of practical guidance on you really can by blending and having harmony with both. You're clearly an example of someone who is just an expert in having these conversations, but it is a hard one expertise because I'm totally hearing that it's the human experience. We're gonna make mistakes. We're gonna have things, and trust me, if we had another hour, I'll be like, "Ooh, I can also share." But I'd actually love to ask you, Hunter, is there, and obviously you can like change names, not say names, what have you, for privacy, but would you be willing to talk about a moment where maybe a difficult conversation became really necessary, one that was higher stakes or one that was bugging you so much? You know, when you all have these nights and you can't sleep, and like, at least for me, the tornado of thoughts and like frustrations are like swirling through your brain, and like, I cannot deal with this any longer. Can you talk about maybe a moment you had to actually address something and what that was like for you? It can be
Absolutely.
personal or professional.
This one is kind of both because I'm thinking about a moment when I was still in school. So I have a master's of divinity. When I was going through that program, there was a point where we needed to do basically an internship. Okay. And I really, really loved the place where I was doing my internship. I did not have a very good relationship with my supervisor, with the person who was appointed to be my guiding person. Uh, Guidance was attempted, but we did not mix well. And uh, I felt like this person wasn't really listening to me, wasn't really giving me the opportunity to fully show them what I could do, and was just kind of deciding uh, that I wasn't cut out for that kind of work um, upon information that was inaccurate, and was kind of beating me down for not doing things the way she wanted me to do those things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it escalated and it escalated and it escalated until eventually she decided I don't want her to be here anymore. Um, and so the difficult conversation was that final sit down negotiation between her and her boss and me and our, school person. And I think at the time I was as composed as I could have been.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't think I handled that conversation as well as I would have wanted to because of how heated and emotional it
Mm-hmm.
was. Because I did believe that I was meant to be there and do that work. And I did connect with people there, just not with her. Um, and you know, um, what she had witnessed were not good representations of all that I could do. Um, and I if I had approached that conversation with the same sort of, you know, the gates that we talked about and
Mm-hmm.
knowing my worth and my value, I would have handled that a lot differently. Um, I still look back on that time in that place fondly, even with all of that, because now, several years removed, um, was it painful? Was it hurtful? Yes. Did I learn a whole heck of a lot about myself and my own kind of call to work in this way? Yes. Um, I learned that um, folks like her uh, are carrying a lot of other crap. And the stuff that she was throwing at me was not really about me. I was on the receiving end, and so that felt charged.
Mm-hmm.
But it took me a long while to really understand that where she was and how she was treating me was not about me. It was about the other things going on in her life, and the um, I was an easy I was an easy target in the moment. Um, and did I handle things, 100% the best way that I should have handled things? No. Um, But did I handle things the way that I needed to handle them? Yes. Um, There was an incident where I'll tell this story. There was an incident where we had just come off of doing a round together, and she gave me some feedback that was really hard to hear and was not particularly helpful, and really just kind of shook me. And then she left me alone. She left me in her office. She went to lunch, and I sat down and wrote my reflection for my assignment. And then I just kind of cried for a little while. Um, and I needed to talk to another human about it. So I did. It just so happened that the other human I went to talk to was her boss. I did not do that with the intention of telling on her boss. I did that because I needed another human to connect with, and he was there and connected with me. That didn't matter. All she saw was the breach of hierarchy, and our relationship was never repairable after that. Um, but she instilled in me this fear of my own ability. What if I do it wrong and I hurt somebody? What if I mess up and I make it worse? Um, and so I was all that was roiling around in my head and in my spirit, and I didn't want to hurt anyone. Surely the last thing I want to do is cause more pain to people who are already in pain. Um, and so it I started to retract from the opportunity. And someone else who wound up picking me up when I was without a placement, though she didn't we didn't know this at the time. I met her for lunch, and I told her about this, and I said I don't want to hurt anybody, and it for transparency's sake, this was a hospital chaplain type position.
Hmm.
So I'm representing a faith coming in and offering comfort and presence for folks who want it. Um, and she said to me something that I now carry with me, which is, "You are not so big as to get in the way of what God is doing. Um, so your mistakes are not so big as to get in the way of the good energy that is out there in the world." However you want to define that.
Hmm.
Your good will happen in spite of you is is the thing, right? And so even if things don't feel all right now, everything will be all right in the end. So if it's not all right, it's not the end.
Hmm. I'm thinking for a second, and you you actually gave me a great cue because I appreciate you talked about you recognized um, in that internship there was maybe a moment that your relationship with that person was, I don't want to say beyond repair, or maybe it's accurate to say just there was a big fracture from that. And what how did you what were the signs of that fracture? Because I think that's really something that we can dive into, because this recording is going to be used especially to help young people really learn these essential skills and things that are going to help them with their personal growth, but also this is going to be so helpful for our allies and professionals who are working with young people. And just this is like essential human knowledge. And I think
Oh yeah.
you and I are people who are very relationship based. And even for us, it can be difficult at times. So I'm just curious, what are your thoughts are um, on relationship repair, like the signs? How would you go about that? Because we talked about apologizing, but I just would love to kind of give you back the open floor on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are lots of different signs, and the presence of a few of them in isolation does not mean that a relationship is splintered. But a pattern of them is really what you want to look for. Um, because if something happens, once or twice, a couple times, that people are people, they're gonna people, right? So if they bail on a meeting, okay, it happens. If it happens repeatedly, I have some questions. Um, what about, for instance, prior to that incident, um, we had done a number of things together outside of the definitions of our roles, which was nice. It gave me opportunities. It gave me networking opportunities. And After things started to get rocky, those became less and less. Um, that was noticeable. It was noticeable when I spent more time in the office with the other folks there than with her. That was noticeable. Um, like those kinds of things where it became clear to me that not only were we not spending time together, but it seemed like uh, one or the other, I won't say I was completely guiltless here, we're looking for ways to not interact with the other person. Um, because I didn't want to accidentally do a thing that would upset her. Um, or, just our interactions became less personable. They were more critical.
Mhm.
Um, the conversation was less two-way and more one way. Um, and whenever I would share my perspective and what I thought, there was no entertaining of the idea. It was just squashed. Um, and that aspect was kind of there from the jump. Um, but I also learned kind of through all of that that that's kind of just who she is as a
Mhm.
person and the environment that she comes from.
Mhm.
Um, and so, that was I took that more personally than it was probably actually intended.
Mhm.
Um, and so, there were things that she was doing that she was not intending to be hurtful, but that were received as something that was hurtful. Um, and vice versa, right? So, I think when it comes to looking for those signs, the thing I would encourage folks to think about is what's the thing that's not being said? What's the thing that we're talking around but not naming? Because usually, whatever the pain point is that thing.
Mhm.
Um, it's not the actual thing you're talking about. Hardly ever is it actually the thing that is on the table for discussion. Normally, it is everything else. Um, and sometimes, I know for some of our spectrum friends, that can be really difficult to kind of make sense of. Um, and that comes with a whole other layer of social dynamics. Um, but the best thing is just to be honest. Be as
Mhm.
honest as you can when you can. And the big thing with honesty is kindness,
Mhm.
because we talk about brutal honesty. Normally, in instances where I have heard talk of brutal honesty, that is just an excuse to say mean things.
Mhm. Mhm.
There is a way to say the truth without being cruel about it.
Mhm.
Um, that is something that I still believe that mentor did not fully understand.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
is that there was no tact with what she had to say. It was just, here's what it is. You make of it what you will.
Yeah.
Which is funny because her entire job was about managing people's emotions, but whatever. Um,
Yeah. You're making. I'm trying to think where I want to start off. Um, Honestly, do you feel like it's fair of me to ask you and ponder? Do you feel like there's just honestly the realization that there's going to be situations we're in that are not a good fit? And it's not about you, it's not about them. Like, clearly, like, we each have our own personalities, styles, or maybe the tasks and dynamics given. And
Absolutely.
a huge part of life is just recognizing, okay, this isn't for me. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And I wish you all the best and be on your merry way.
Absolutely, yes. There are some things that are for a season, and there are some things that are forever. And being able to recognize what is seasonal, what is there for a temporary period of time, but is not something that you are meant to do for the long haul, Um, I think that, and sometimes recognizing those circumstances takes time. Um, some things are feel really good and you don't want it to go away because it feels like this is where it's supposed to be. And it can be really hard when you realize that that feeling good space is also seasonal.
Hmm.
Um, because, saying that there are some things for a season is comforting when the season doesn't feel good. But
Hmm.
it's kind of scary when also the season feels really good and you don't want to
Hmm.
leave it.
Hmm.
Um, but I often find that when that happens, it's because there is something better waiting for you. You just don't know about it yet.
Hmm.
You just haven't encountered it yet. Let me give you an example. So when I was getting ready to leave seminary, I was finishing my master's degree, and I did not have a job on the horizon. I did not have I'm still going through the ordination process now, 3 years post grad. Um, I, I had no idea what was waiting for me, and I was terrified. At least when I was still in school, I knew what I was doing every day. Um, so I spent months petrified and trying to plan for things that I had no way of knowing. Um, and so I went out on a limb and I visited some things and I went to an event that turned into a networking opportunity. I ran into someone that I had done some minor work for before I started grad school, um, who I had not really spoken to since. And she was at this event. She was like, "Hey, are you still what are you doing now?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm getting ready to graduate. I don't really know what comes next." She's like, "Hey, I have a position." I'm like, "What?" And so without even trying, I fell into an opportunity that had
Hmm.
created a landing pad that now has launched me into my career.
Mm.
And I could not have pictured it before graduation. I didn't know what it looked like. I didn't know who it would be. And I was scared because it was uncertain. And I
Mm.
was scared because all of the other stuff before had been
Hmm.
stable.
Hmm.
But it was right there. I just needed to kind of breathe a little bit and just put myself out there.
Hmm.
This was at a disability pride event. I ran into somebody at a disability pride event who went, "Hey, it's good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. What are you up to now?" And I expressed, and she goes, "Come here. I got something for you."
Yeah, yeah, no, I can recognize those moments in my own life too. And I think that's wonderful because I want to touch on for a second, like the season versus,
Mhm.
longer periods or air quotes forever or
Yeah.
longer. But I think I can recognize in my own life those tough moments. And I love what you said about it's comforting when you're in a tough moment. Oh, it won't last forever. It's so difficult when everything's amazing and nothing lasts forever, or it's just, you find out it's a seasonal thing. But I think I can recognize in my own life and totally hearing and relating to your stories, Hunter, that it's those tougher periods that have helped me grow. It's like who we are as people. It's like exercising muscles, like it's stronger and stronger. It may not always feel like a consecutive, forward momentum, but it totally is. I think my biggest hope for our listeners is it truly is, as crappy as it can feel in some of these times, it is truly a muscle. And just when you keep pushing forward and having those conversations and honoring your values and who you are, eventually you will keep building and creating the life you want. Which I now want to say before I forget, I love that, we've been talking for almost 40 minutes. And I think and I love that. And I think coming to this conversation, I think that what you said was a good reminder. Is I have sometimes thought of as tough conversations or tough decisions as long, drawn out conversations. As all right, let's get ready for the battle sometimes. But I love what you said when you were at that networking event when that person asked you, "Hey, Hunter, so good to see you. What's new?" There was a time, Hunter, if I was in your shoes, I would have been too nervous or not wanting to have admitted the full truth. And I said, "Oh," I would have probably said, "Oh, what's new, Michael?" I'd be like, "Not much," or like, "It's going okay." But because you had the vulnerability and honesty to actually just a quick comment, right? Like, "Hey, I'm navigating through some uncertainty right now, but happy to see you." That type of conversation that opened a doorway for you.
Yeah. And it can feel really scary to go out on a limb and say something that maybe doesn't feel like it puts you in the strongest footing, but there's a reason that the back foot is the stronger foot, um, in your stance, if you will, because vulnerability leads to change. You don't get change without loss. Um, you have there are times where, and this is, I think, something that speaks to what we're going through as a people, right? Um, is that it we want change, but we don't want to lose anything. We want things to change, but we don't want anything about our lives to change.
Mhm.
Um, and that's not how change works. um, so a book that I think would really help folks. There is a guy named Todd Boldinger who writes about um, change and navigating transformational change as a people. Um, the book is called Canoeing the Mountains, and it is about actually it's about Lewis and Clark, um, because their original mission uh, was to find a waterway to the west. Their original job was to find a river that took you from the East Coast to the West Coast. Now, today, we know that you get past a certain point, and there's no water out west.
Mhm.
It's all mountains. But they didn't know that then. So they got to the top of this ridge and they're carrying their canoes that they just picked up out of the river and are trying to cross the hill. And they're thinking, we'll just get on the other side of this hill and there'll be more water and we can put it in and go. And no, they got to the other side of that hill and they're looking at the Rocky Mountains.
Mhm.
And then what? Now what?
Mhm.
What? How do you adapt? Um, what do you have to let go of in order to change, in order to move forward? And that involves a level of vulnerability. Did I come out in the conversation and say that I was, down and scared and all that stuff? No, I didn't. She asked me, "Are you still in school?" And I said, "Well, I just graduated. I'm not sure what life has in store for me." And that was all it took.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
it just required a level of willingness to admit where I was,
Mhm.
and on her end, to see a potential opportunity and
Mhm.
draw that connection, um,
Mhm.
to not let it pass her by. Um, I think oftentimes for those of us who are looking for those opportunities, um, it can be easy to think, well, I just need to push hard enough. Partially, yes, but also if someone else doesn't think to connect you, you don't know what you don't know.
Mhm.
So for those who have, are connected to different resources and opportunities, you have a bit of a responsibility to be looking out for those potential connections. That's what having connections is all about.
Mhm.
Um, so that coin kind of goes in both directions, and it only works when both people do their part.
Mhm. Mhm. Um, no, that's really cool. I kind of want to ask you, Hunter. Um, what has pivoting looked like for you when you shared, like, okay, they were looking for water out west, and now there's nothing but mountains. What happens, or like, was there a moment where, like, and you've talked about this already, but I guess I just would love to hear more. Is okay, like after you've had tough conversations, made important decisions, what advice do you have if someone has like just on the other side of like, all right, I had this tough conversation, I made this decision. Maybe they're in a season now where it looked like spring. Oh, this decision was more like the dead of winter when you have both eyes open. How do you handle um, just navigating um, and pivoting and just staying, you know, with forward momentum and under and going back to just who you are as a person and honoring that.
Absolutely. I think it goes to what do you well, I'm gonna quote another nerdy reference here. Um, if you're familiar with Avatar: The Last Airbender, Uncle
A
Iroh,
little bit.
he says, "Who are you, and what do you want?" Um, Asking yourself those kinds of questions. What do you really want? And why do you want it? I think that part, that why do you want it piece, oftentimes doesn't get asked, but I think really needs to be asked. Not because I'm questioning motivation, but
Mm-hmm.
because I'm trying to understand what about this thing is what you actually want. Um, is it that let me give you an example. Um, Say you really want to play football. Why do you want to play football? Do you want to be good at sports? Do you want the attention? Do you want the money? What about it is what you are after?
Mm-hmm.
Um, because sometimes you can find the thing you're after in a different place. Um, and I'll give you an example. I wasn't always in ministry. I wanted to be on Broadway. I still to this day I love musical theater. I love performance. And I spent many years doing all sorts of theater things. And then I finished college with my theater arts degree and went, well, that was fun, but no one's going to hire me to do that. For a variety of reasons, none the least being I could make all the best acting decisions in the world, but if someone else who doesn't look like me makes those same acting decisions, they're going to get the job and I'm not. That's that's what it comes down to. Um, and when I realized that, I kind of had a bit of a life crisis because I'm like, I just spent all this time and money working on a degree towards something that I truly love, but
Mm-hmm.
that my body is not well suited for. And so I really had to think about what is it about theater that I really love? Is it the applause? Yeah, kind of. Is it the stories? Yes. What about stories? And so that brought me on, I had always been a person of faith. I had always, I grew up in the church, but I had never thought about it in the way that I thought about it in that transition of like, oh, wait a minute. We tell stories every week. What is a sermon if not a story with a lesson? And what is a play if not a story with a lesson, right? So they're and I know lots of people in faith traditions who would clutch their pearls at my saying that, making that comparison. But the point is, I really sat with what it was I enjoyed about the thing I wanted to do. And when I realized that the thing I enjoyed was not specific to theater, it was something I could get in a bunch of different places. That opened my horizon to be able to
Mm-hmm.
pivot and to be able to land myself in a place that I may not know where this is leading. I may not know necessarily what it's going to look like at the end, but I know what I enjoy about it and I know what I'm looking for, and we'll see where I find it. If I find it in the place I thought I'd find it, great. If I find it in a place that I wasn't looking for it, even better.
Mm. That's incredible, Hunter, and I think you just wrapped it up beautifully. And we at Street Smart Ventures have a phrase, "Wrap the baby," that that we say. And I just want to tie in our 5 pillars, which is autonomy, opportunity, community, entrepreneurship, and life design. Those guide everything we do. And I think everything you shared ties beautifully into that because I think obviously the key pillar we talked about is life design, but everything you shared drives home the point when you know who you are and what you want, you can find those common threads. And when you are in a situation or a conversation that maybe is an amazing fit or a not so great fit, by drawing on that understanding of yourself, you're going to make more impactful, powerful decisions and have those conversations. And just again, just in the best of scenarios, just life should theoretically just get easier in that sense. And I'm always hesitant to say like life is easy. I know life is very complex, but I feel like you get what I'm trying to say.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it it both gets easier and doesn't at the same time. Um, a great way to describe it is, does life get easier? No, but I'm stronger now than I was then.
Mm,
And so it feels easier
mm,
because I've gone through enough to know, what my strengths are, what my weaknesses are. Knowing yourself and knowing, not just your values and your beliefs and who you are authentically as a person, but knowing your limitations as a person. Because oftentimes good fits come when you complement each other's weaknesses.
mm,
And so if you're in a place where you're um, butting up against someone else's strengths, maybe it's not your maybe it's not your fit. If you're coming into a place where you see where there's a need and you can meet it, that's a great fit.
mm. I'm just, you know me so well, Hunter. You know, I inadvertently have a habit, not on purpose, but of like interrupting people because I get so excited. So you can probably tell, right, during our recorded conversation, I'm like, Michael, don't interrupt Hunter, even though you want to because you're so excited. You're like, I'm like white knuckling it on this chair, like let her speak, like don't interrupt.
No, you're good. Go ahead. What do you think?
No, I'm just again just so honored and privileged to share space with you for this recording. I think you've um, shared so much wisdom. Is there anything on your heart and mind right now that you just want to share with our audience, whether it be young people or adult allies or systems leaders, administrators globally? Like, what do you feel like is going to just help us move forward as humans?
I want to encourage all of your listeners, no matter what role you possess, or if you don't possess one. Um, I want to encourage everyone to look for those opportunities, whether they are, entrepreneurial in nature, or whether they're, what, I want to learn to knit, whatever it is. um, because whatever they are, make room for joy, make room for curiosity and wonder and fun, because all the important, serious stuff doesn't come together if your team doesn't care about each other, if your team can't trust one another, if your team can't work together and figure things out. Um, that is the most critical part of any team, is being able to know and feel that you've got each other's backs. And when that is not the case, very little productive actually happens because there's a lot of other stuff that gets in the way. So if you dedicate your time and energy towards healing those places, I think you will find that a lot of other things suddenly become a lot easier.
So well said, Hunter. And before we close out, where can people find you if they want to connect with you, and if that's even possible? I know you are incredibly busy, but in your role as a leader, I'd just love for you to shamelessly plug anything you've got going on, anything you're doing, anything we should all know about.
Oh, heck yeah, all sorts of things. Well, you can find me. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. I'm a contributor for the Presbyterian Outlook, as well as a leader in Presbyterians for Disability Concerns. There's a lot of stuff that I've written in those places, as well as there is a book coming out in next summer, the summer of 26, that I've contributed to that I'm super excited about. It's about doing ministry with young people with disabilities, with contributions from young people with disabilities of faith, talking about what that leadership looks like. Um, and I'm just so excited to see all of these threads start coming together. A lot of a lot of my time has been like, okay, I have skills in these different areas and I can be good at a lot of different things, but what do I want to be good at?
Mm,
Is kind of the question that I found myself wrestling with. And so I see the threads kind of beginning to come together in a way that allows me to do a lot of things at the same time
mhm.
that I didn't think I would be able to do in isolation, let alone at the same time. So one of the things that I'm learning is bandwidth. Um, but that's a whole other conversation.
Have you ever heard the phrase, you can do anything, you can't do everything?
Yep,
Yep. Because that just came to mind when you said all that. But what a beautiful place to be in, where it's beautifully busy. Where you have all these connecting threads that are aligned with your mission, your purpose, your values, your passions. And I cannot wait to check out that book. And again, Hunter, I just want to thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, your expertise. It's been a joy to have you on here, and I just can't wait for this to go live so our audience can hear it.
absolutely. Thank you so much for listening, friends, and I hope you are well and stay well.
Thanks so much, everyone. Until next time.